There comes a time in every woman's life when she realizes that what she once overlooked, what she once brushed aside as ordinary, was in fact extraordinary. It often begins slowly, quietly, like a shadow creeping into her thoughts. And then all at once, it overwhelms her. She starts remembering not because she chooses to, but because memory has a way of knocking at the door of the heart when the absence becomes undeniable. It is in that absence that she begins to see clearly what she once had. At first, she convinces herself she is fine. Life is moving on. On. The days are busy and distractions are plenty. She laughs, she smiles, she chats with friends, and she posts her updates as if everything is perfect. But deep down, when the noise settles and the world quiets down, her thoughts begin to wander. She remembers the way her phone used to light up with a message that wasn't just casual, but carried weight. A simple "How are you?" That meant more than 100 empty conversations she now entertains. Suddenly, she realizes that the consistency she once found predictable was in fact a rare form of care. She begins to miss it, not in small doses, but with a growing intensity. It is often in the silence that the longing becomes loudest. She scrolls through her phone looking for something, anything that can replicate the energy she once felt. But no matter how many names she flips past, none of them carry that same warmth. None of them can spark that same comfort. She remembers the laughter that wasn't forced, the conversations that weren't rehearsed, the moments that felt so safe yet so thrilling. What she once took as ordinary banter now feels like the rarest form of connection, and in that moment she begins to miss not the presence, but the essence, the way she was seen, the way she was understood without saying too much. What women often fail to realize in the beginning is that consistency is love in motion. It isn't grand gestures. It isn't fleeting passion. It isn't empty promises. It's the small daily things that seem so insignificant until they are gone. The good morning texts, the check-ins during the day, the listening ear after a long evening, the patience during her storms, the unwavering presence in times when others would have walked away. She once dismissed these as normal, as if every man would do them, as if these things were guaranteed. But when she looks around and sees how rare such devotion truly is, she begins to ache for what she once had. The missing doesn't start with one big realization. It begins with tiny reminders. She hears a song that once played in the background of their conversations. She sees a couple holding hands and suddenly her chest tightens. She finds herself telling stories that involve someone she no longer has access to. And every reminder cuts deeper because the more she remembers, the more she realizes she didn't just lose a person. She lost an entire experience, an entire feeling that cannot be duplicated. In the beginning, she thought she could replace it. She thought she could meet someone else, start fresh, and build something new. But soon she finds that not every connection carries depth. Not every smile holds sincerity. Not every word is backed by action. And in her search to fill that void, she only ends up making comparisons. Each new interaction reminds her of the authenticity she overlooked. Each empty exchange brings her face to face with the fact that she once had something genuine, something steady, something worth cherishing. That is when the regret sets in. It is subtle at first. She tells herself it was just timing, that maybe she wasn't ready, that maybe things just happened as they should. But as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, the weight of that regret begins to grow heavier. She replays moments in her mind, moments where she could have been more appreciative, moments where she could have chosen understanding over pride, moments where she could have recognized the value before it slipped away. And each replay becomes a lesson she can't undo. There comes a night when she lies in bed, unable to sleep, scrolling aimlessly, and suddenly the memories flood in. The way he made her laugh without trying, the way he cared without being asked, the way he was patient when she was difficult, the way he stayed when others would have left. And in that flood of memories, she begins to whisper to herself, "I didn't know it mattered that much." But the truth is, it always mattered. She just didn't see it then. The missing intensifies when she realizes that no matter how much time passes, not everyone leaves the same imprint. People can walk into her life and bring excitement, but excitement fades. People can bring gifts, but gifts lose their shine. People can bring attention, but attention is shallow. What she truly misses is the depth, the stability, the kind of love that doesn't shout but whispers consistently day after day without fail. That is the love she took for granted. And then she begins to notice the void in her everyday life. She notices it when she shares good news and realizes the joy isn't complete without that one person to celebrate with. She notices it when she's going through something tough and realizes there's no one who truly knows how to calm her storms. She notices it when she feels lonely in a crowd because true connection isn't about presence. It's about soul recognition. And she had that once, but she let it slip through her fingers. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that comes with this realization. It isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, but it lingers. It lingers in the way she hesitates before opening old conversations, knowing they'll sting. It lingers in the way she avoids certain places because they remind her too much of what once was. It lingers in the way her heart still skips a beat at the thought of what could have been. Missing isn't always about wanting to go back. It's about realizing that the best parts of her past can't be replicated in her present. Over time, she learns that the very things she once complained about are the things she now craves. The good morning texts that felt repetitive, the constant check-ins that felt overbearing, the availability that felt too much. Now she misses them because in their absence, she realizes they were never too much. They were love expressed in ways she didn't recognize until it was too late. She begins to miss the way she was challenged, the way she was inspired to do better, the way she was held accountable when she strayed. At the time, she may have seen it as nagging, as unnecessary correction, but now she sees it as care, as someone wanting to become her best self. That kind of investment is rare, and once it's gone, the silence that follows is unbearable. And so, the missing becomes a teacher. It teaches her the value of presence. It teaches her the importance of gratitude. It teaches her that not everything lasts forever, and that sometimes the best gifts in life are disguised in ordinary consistency. By the time she realizes this, the chapters have already turned, and she finds herself living with the echoes of what once was. This is the story many women face, but rarely admit. They miss deeply, silently, hoping that somehow time could rewind. But the truth about missing someone you took for granted is this. It isn't just about the person. It's about missing the version of yourself that existed when you were loved with that depth. It's about missing the comfort of being seen, valued, and cared for without asking. It's about missing the simple, steady things that turn out to be the most important things of all. And when she finally faces this truth, she learns one of the hardest lessons in love. People don't always wait to be appreciated. Sometimes by the time you realize their worth, they have already taken their love, their effort, their presence, and given it to someone who won't make the same mistake. And it's in that moment she feels the weight of what she once had and the emptiness of what she let go. That is how women start missing the man they once took for granted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly. Through the quiet reminders of everyday life, through the memories that won't fade, through the void that can't be filled, through the realization that love like that doesn't come around often. And in that realization, she finally understands the value of what she lost. Because the truth is, when the heart has once tasted something real, everything else feels incomplete. And no matter how much time passes or how many faces she meets, she will always carry that missing in her soul. It becomes a permanent reminder that love should never be taken for granted. Because once it's gone, the echo of its absence lingers forever, so constant that it almost felt ordinary. That blindness becomes the root of the missing. Because now her eyes are wide open and she sees clearly what was always right in front of her. At first, she doesn't call it missing. She calls it nostalgia. She calls it just a passing thought. She tells herself it's normal to remember that it doesn't mean anything. But memory has a way of coming back again, until it forces you to admit that it is not just memory. It is longing. It is emptiness, disguised as reflection. It is a silent craving for what can no longer be reached. Sometimes she tries to fill that void with distractions. She busies herself with work, with friends, with hobbies. She scrolls endlessly through her phone seeking a temporary escape from her thoughts. She entertains conversations with people who make her smile, hoping the smile will drown out the Asian inside. But the truth is, none of it works. Because when the night falls and silence fills the room, there is nowhere left to hide. That's when the missing becomes loud. When her thoughts run unfiltered, when she faces the reality that she let something precious slip away, she remembers not just the good moments, but even the challenging ones. And strangely, even the challenges begin to feel worth missing. She misses the disagreements that still ended with understanding. She misses the debates that sharpened her perspective. She misses the times when she was upset, yet still felt secure because deep down, she knew she wasn't being abandoned. Even the hard times carried a strange kind of beauty because they were real, they were raw, and they carried the reassurance of someone who stayed. That is what makes the missing unbearable. Not just the loss of joy, but the loss of certainty, the loss of a bond that could weather storms. With time, she begins to notice how rare such consistency truly is. The world is full of fleeting attention of people who show interest for a moment and disappear the next. She meets new faces, but they vanish just as quickly. She hears new promises, but they fade before they even take root. And in the middle of all that inconsistency, she remembers the one who never wavered, the one whose presence she once dismissed because it seemed too steady, too predictable. Now she knows that predictability was a gift. Because in a world full of uncertainty, reliability is love. There comes a day when she stumbles upon old photos, old messages, maybe even old places that hold the echoes of laughter and conversation. She pauses, and for a moment her heartache is in silence. The pictures aren't just images, they are proof of what once was. The words aren't just texts, they are footprints of devotion that can no longer be retraced. The places aren't just locations, they are witnesses of moments she once took lightly, but now treasures deeply. That is when she realizes that missing is not just about losing a person, it's about losing a part of her own history, a part that once made her feel whole. Regret settles in quietly but firmly. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just a whisper in the back of her mind, a question that repeats itself. What if I had appreciated more? What if I had listened more? What if I had stayed instead of pulling away? These questions have no answers, yet they linger endlessly, eating away at her peace. Regret has a way of magnifying the value of the past. It makes her see clearly what she refused to see. Then that love is not always about perfection. It is about effort, consistency, and presence. And she once had that, but she let it slip through her fingers. She might even try to mask the missing with pride. She tells herself she doesn't care. She convinces others she has moved on. But the heart does not lie. The heart does not hide. It reveals itself in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And in those quiet moments, she admits to herself that she longs. She aches. She misses in ways words cannot fully capture. The missing becomes even more powerful when she sees that life goes on for the one she once overlooked. When she notices that he is no longer waiting, no longer reaching out, no longer available in the way he once was, it hits harder because now she realizes that while she is drowning in memories, he has found new shores. He has chosen to build elsewhere, to give his devotion to someone who recognizes it, to share his presence with someone who doesn't take it for granted. And in that realization, the missing transforms into a wound that carries both longing and loss. It is often said that absence makes the heart grow fonder. But in her case, absence makes the heart wiser. It teaches her lessons she didn't want to learn. It teaches her that love is not just about passion. It is about patience. It teaches her that consistency is not boring. It is priceless. It teaches her that devotion is not suffocating. It is security. These lessons come too late. And that is the cruel part. Because wisdom gained after the fact cannot change what has already been lost, and so she carries this wisdom like a burden. She becomes more aware in her future interactions, more careful with her words, more cautious with her decisions. But deep inside, she knows that this awareness was bought at the cost of something she cannot retrieve. That is what makes the missing eternal, because every new chapter she enters will always carry the shadow of the one she once overlooked. She may laugh again, she may love again, she may even find new forms of happiness, but the missing does not vanish. It softens, it quiets, but it lingers. It lingers in the way she compares without meaning to. It lingers in the way she measures new experiences against old ones. It lingers in the way she sometimes wonders what if. And though she may never say it out loud, she knows in her heart that nothing ever feels quite the same. That is how women start missing the man they once took for granted. Not through sudden grand epiphanies, but through the quiet, relentless pull of memory, regret, and realization. They miss him when life shows them how rare such love is. They miss him when loneliness reminds them of what they once had. They miss him when the future, no matter how promising, fails to erase the beauty of the past. And in that missing, they learn one of the most profound truths: love should never be treated as ordinary. Because what feels ordinary today might one day become the very thing you crave the most. What feels consistent and predictable might one day reveal itself as the most precious treasure. And what you take for granted might one day be the only thing your heart cannot forget. The missing is the echo of unrecognized value. It is the price of realizing too late that love is fragile, fleeting, and irreplaceable. And as she walks through life carrying that echo, she finally understands that appreciation is the only true antidote to regret. Once you lose someone who gave you genuine love, you don't just miss them. You miss the way they made the world feel safe, the way they made life feel lighter, the way they made love feel real. And that is a void, no distraction, no substitute, no amount of time can ever truly fill. Because the truth remains, when the heart has once been loved deeply and consistently, everything else feels like a shadow. And no matter how far she goes, no matter how much she tries to move on, she will always, in some quiet part of her soul, carry the ache of missing the man she once took for granted. Sometimes the greatest form of missing is not even about the person themselves, but about the space they created in your life. She begins to notice the silence where laughter used to be, the emptiness where conversations once flowed, the absence of that steady reassurance that made her feel seen in a way few people ever could. And no matter how much she tries to convince herself that life has moved on, she feels the difference in the small everyday moments. When she accomplishes something big, there is no one who celebrates with the same pride. When she feels broken, there is no one who listens without judgment. When she is simply living her day, there is no one who truly notices the little details that make her who she is. That kind of presence cannot be faked, and its absence is always felt. The missing grows deeper when she realizes she cannot undo the past. She cannot go back and appreciate what she once dismissed. She cannot turn back time and hold tighter to the moments she let slip away. She cannot relive the security, the peace, the warmth that once surrounded her. And so she must live with the age of what could have been with the weight of lessons learned too late. It is then she understands that the cost of taking someone for granted is not just losing them. It is living with the constant reminder of their absence. It is carrying a quiet longing that never fully disappears. And in that truth she learns that love once lost does not vanish from memory. It lingers, it echoes, and it forever shapes the way she sees the world, because once she has known real love, nothing else will ever feel the same.